Good evening, spooks. My name is Jess. I put the J in JT Reads, and I am a proud bisexual, pansexual woman. I accept either. I choose my partners based on their personality and not their gender. Historically, I have chosen not wisely, but that's a story for another day. Perhaps when we've got something stronger than a glass of water. You know? Right now, we are loved, we are loving, and we're going to talk about some queer books. As Pride Month is coming to an end, let's keep those queer stories going into July, into 2025, into forever. Forever and ever, because queer people and their stories are here to stay. Now, I love nothing more than consuming queer stories. I love all stories. Plot twist. I love books. But queer books are really my jam. And if they can be a sapphic horror, say less. I have some recs for you today split by genre, and this is not a comprehensive list. There are so many queer books out there, but these are just some of my favorites that I have read recently as well. And if you watch this video and think at the end, there are some genres that you didn't mention, that's because I don't read every genre and I would feel like a fraud recommending you any book in said genre. For example, non-fiction. I don't know, I haven't read any. I do have this book out on Libby at the moment, and I'm very intrigued by this one, but I can't recommend it to you right now because I haven't read it. But maybe you could read it and tell me if it's really good, and then I'll get to it one day. But yes, so if you see any genres missing, that is why. And if you think of any books that I should have mentioned here or that you think deserve the hype, please let me know. First up, of course, we have horror. YA horror to be specific, and it wouldn't be right doing any video on horror or queer books and not mentioning She Is a Haunting by Tran Than Tran. I am obsessed with this book. I read this in May of last year and have not stopped speaking about it since. The tagline for She Is a Haunting is as follows: a house with a terrifying appetite haunts a broken family in this atmospheric horror, perfect for fans of Mexican Gothic. Haven't read that, by the way, probably should. The synopsis says, when Jade Guin arrives in Vietnam for a visit with her estranged father, she has one goal: survive 5 weeks pretending to be a happy family in the French colonial house in which Ba is restoring. She's always lied to fit in, so if she's straight enough, Vietnamese enough, American enough, she can get out with the college money he promised. But the house has other plans. The protagonist, Jade, is a bisexual young woman, and I love to see bi rep in books. I don't feel it happens often enough, and I could always do with more of it. There is also a sapphic romance within the book, and the author themselves uses she/they pronouns. So definitely, massively recommend this if you want some queer rep in your books. Next up, we have a fantasy, and I am not a massive fantasy reader. I enjoy the genre, but I haven't read a lot of it. I've just dabbled, and I could so easily recommend to you for a sapphic romance storyline within a fantasy book, The Priory of the Orange Tree, naturally, and it would fully deserve its place on this list. However, a book that falls into the fantasy genre whilst also falling into historical fiction that I absolutely adored would be The Binding by Bridget Collins. Now, I got rid of the dust jacket. I was going through a phase of binning dust jackets. I'm disgusting, I know, you don't need to tell me. Fine, but why so chaotic, Jess? You could just put it in a box. This book is stunning in more ways than one: appearance, plot, subject. But today we're here to talk about the fact that this involves a romance between two young men, and it is such a touching romance. It is well worth the read. Even if you're not really a fantasy reader like me, it's light on the fantasy, heavy on the love. The synopsis is: books are dangerous things in Collins' alternate universe, a place vaguely reminiscent of 19th century England. It's a world in which people visit bookbinders to rid themselves of painful or treacherous memories. Once their stories have been told and are bound between the pages of a book, the slate is wiped clean and their memories lose the power to hurt or haunt them. Does that not make you want to read that book? It was a 5-star read for me. Bridget Collins can do absolutely no wrong in my eyes. Next up, we have a book that could fall under fantasy, but I think it's more likely to fall under magical realism, and that is Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. And first of all, I say this every time, it's a great cover. But mainly, the main character in this book is Pet, She's on the cover. She is a 15-year-old trans girl with the most beautifully supportive parents you could probably imagine. Aside from other plot points, this feels like a very safe space sort of book. It still hits on some very hard topics, but the family unit just feels so safe and secure. The synopsis is a thought-provoking and haunting novel about a creature that escapes from an artist's canvas whose talent is sniffing out monsters in a world that claims they don't exist anymore. It has a lot of social commentary on racism, so it makes for a very insightful read, but also very enjoyable. It packs a punch in a small book. A book then came out afterwards, which I think was the prequel, and that is called Bitter, and it's based on Pet's mum. I didn't enjoy it as much. I really enjoyed Pet herself and her story, but would still recommend picking up the duology. Next up, we have a genre that I fall back on time and time again when I need just a little break from horror and to read something thought-provoking and stunning, and that is literary fiction. And the book in question is Milk-Fed by Melissa Broder. The cover, she's beautiful. This is gross in parts. It is a messy, tender tale of sapphic romance. It will have you laughing, crying, cringing, all of the above. The tagline is a scathingly funny, wildly erotic, and fiercely imaginative story about food, sex, and God. It was a 4-star read for me. The last 2 books on my list, I listened to the audiobook, so I don't have the physical copy, but I will put an image here when I start talking about it. So again, we have a genre that I don't dabble in all that much, but when I read this book, that might just have changed that fact. The genre is memoirs, and I haven't read a lot, I really haven't, but I have read In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, and my gosh, this was poetic, frustrating, heartbreaking. Memoir follows Carmen's experience in a same-sex abusive relationship, but it isn't written like your average memoir. I won't say anything else on the form of it because I don't want to ruin it if you're going to read it, but it's very well crafted. The tagline is, in this extraordinarily candid and radically inventive memoir, Machado tackles a dark and difficult subject with wit, inventiveness, and an inquiring spirit, as she uses a series of narrative tropes, this is what I'm talking about, including classic horror themes, to create an entirely unique piece of work, which is destined to become an instant classic. It's just really clever, okay? Go read it. Go read it now. Pause the video. I'll wait. Not out of time. Last but not least, we have another genre that I don't dabble in all that often, and that is sci-fi. And the reason I don't dabble is because I've just had one too many bad experiences with it being very patriarchal, sexist, just war and misery, and women just get such a crappy deal. But, that is not the case when it comes to A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. I always want to say Wild Built. Now, a fair disclaimer is, I'm not a sci-fi reader, and this was quite a lot of no plot, just vibes for my personal enjoyment. I think I still rated it 3 stars. Had a great time, enjoyed reading it. It just wasn't exactly what I was looking for when I pick up a book. But that is on me because I don't read sci-fi. However, I cannot deny that it was well crafted, well written, all of the characters were well rounded, and it is a tale of a really beautiful friendship. Let the tagline do the talking. The tagline is, centuries before, robots of Panga gained self-awareness, laid down their tools, wandered en masse into the wilderness, never to be seen again. They faded into myth and urban legend. Well, that is until a robot stumbles across a non-binary T-monk. A T-monk? I know, does that not have you hooked? And they become friends and go on a journey together of self-discovery. No spoilers. If you're a fan of a gentler sci-fi, I think that you would really enjoy this one. And the fact that the main character is non-binary is barely even a topic. And I always say when I'm reading a queer book, I don't read romance. You'll see that romance isn't really on here. It's not really my thing. I am confident there are so many good queer romance books out there. If you know of any, sprinkle them in the comments. However, when reading books that aren't romance and involve queer characters, I like for the focus not to be on the fact that they're queer, because, spoiler alert, it's normal. If I'm reading a horror, I don't want there to be an entire 4 chapters just about the fact that hey, this person's gay. They're gay. I just want it to be accepted. It's just, okay, they're gay. And I haven't mentioned it in this video because there are so many horror books I could have picked. But Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson does that very, very well, especially because the main character herself meets a woman and develops a crush for the first time, but there's no intense focus on, oh my god, this is so strange, this is so different, is this okay? What will my friends say? What will my colleagues say? What will my parents say? It's just, hey, there's a woman that I find attractive and I'd like to get to know her more. I love that. I live for that. And there is a place in literature for the coming of age or coming into your queerness at a later age. There is a place for all of that commentary for sure. But in the books that I personally like to read, I like when it is just part of the character. It's just part of the character, not part of the story. So those are the top queer books for me in those genres specified. And as I said earlier, there are so many others out there. As always, if you have any recommendations, queer books, queer horror books, books otherwise, any type of books, drop them down below if you think I will enjoy them, if you think that people should read these books, any non-fiction queer books, would love to hear your comments as always. But for now, thank you so much for watching and I'll catch you in a video very, very soon. Sounds gay, I'm in. Bye! Let me show you